and welcome to the Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation Community Coaches Forum. I'm Gerard Waitley. Sport's always been in our cultural identity as Victorians. We live and breathe sport all year round. Growing up, many of us would have played and watched sport, enjoying the thrill of the game for what it is and how it brought people and fans together. Young people today, however, are fed a different narrative from the endless stream of sports betting ads on TV, with almost 1,000 gambling ads aired on free-to-air TV daily. Sports is now being positioned alongside gambling as a social activity where mates enjoy and win together. This has led us to the current situation. Young people aged between 18 and 24 are now the largest group of sports bettors in Victoria. Today, we're here to reaffirm our love for sports and focus on creating a positive culture in clubs and teams to help young people thrive and grow up with healthy and realistic mindsets when it comes to the love of the game and how to ensure they are aware of the risks associated with sports betting. Abby Holmes is my co-host. Ab, great to see you.
Great to see you as well.
What have we got in store?
Oh, we've got an action-packed forum coming our way. We've got Paul Roos, Chris Scott, Emma Murray and Damien Carroll, just some of the incredible coaches and leading experts in their field that will be joining us.
There'll be some great insights to be had along the way. So let's start with two of the central figures here. Shane Lucas is the Chief Executive of the Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation. Shane, great to have you here.
Thanks, Gerard. Thanks for having us.
And Ben Kavanagh is the head of AFL Victoria. Hello to you, Ben.
Thanks, Gerard and Abby.
Shane, what would you like this forum to be?
Look, I really want this forum to take off where you left off, Gerard. This is about reaffirming the love of the game. There's been too much association and normalisation over many years of gambling, sports betting with sport. So we want to really make this about a very positive message to children and to families. Love the game for what it is. Enjoy the sport for all the other things you get from sport. You know, teamwork, friends, fitness, all those things that we enjoyed as kids, and don't associate it with gambling.
There's the great connection from the grassroots through to the elite. What can the coach's role be in that?
Look, I think the coaches, and I also use parents here because especially in community junior sport, of course, coaches are parents. I think parents and coaches have got a real role as role models to talk to kids about the risks associated with gambling and sports betting, and to really reaffirm that positive message about go out there, have a kick, enjoy the game for what it is.
And Ben, you took the reins as head of AFL Victoria at the end of last year. How are you finding your first season at the helm?
Absolutely loving the role, Abby. It's a big machine, Victorian community football. We're talking about 90 leagues, we're talking about 1,300 clubs, 7,000 teams and almost 200,000 participants. We've got almost 45,000 people in Auskick and big school programs as well. And to be honest, it's all credit to our volunteer base who have played an enormous role in getting the game back to close to what it was pre-COVID times.
And what role does AFL Vic play in community footy, and what are a couple of the things that you're really focusing on after a challenging couple of years?
Yeah, so there's probably three key areas we play in. One's the community football space, where a big focus this season has certainly been around umpiring, coaching and volunteers. Volunteers play an enormous role in that space, and we've put in a number of new positions there to get face-to-face with clubs, to help in a hands-on way, to get volunteerism back to where it was pre-COVID. Yep. We also played an enormous role in growing the game. So we're talking about school programs, we're talking about Auskick in that space. Numbers have come back really well. 5 to 6s at the entry level are actually booming, higher than they've ever been. The 7 to 8s is an interesting space. They're the kids that were 5 to 6 during COVID, haven't quite come back in the levels they were prior. So a bit of a focus area for us there. We also work strongly in the community space. So around facilities particularly. Big focus at the moment on making female-friendly facilities for women across the board, and also growing our lighting capability there so the facilities we have got can be fully utilised.
Shane, just give us an insight into your role with Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation.
So personally, I'm the CEO at VRGF. We've got a range of activities that we are funded by the Victorian Government to undertake. One is what you might call the pointy end, providing treatment and financial and therapeutic counselling to people who experience gambling harm. But this stuff in many respects is the most important component. It's the prevention focus, and trying to basically work with communities through things like sport, through active engagement, to really talk to people about the risks and try and prevent people falling into harm from gambling.
And Ben, same from your front, you've got over 10,000 coaches registered here in Victoria alone. So what role do they play as role models of these young players?
Look, my personal opinion is the coaches are the most influential people in our clubs.
Yep.
They're influential to the players, of course, but also to the broader clubs. They're the face of the clubs, they're the voice of the clubs, they influence the parents, they influence the other officials as well. Another role we've put in this year is what we're calling a coach developer. They can again get face-to-face out in clubland, helping to develop these coaches with A, their technical skills, but B, the environment they put around clubs. And certainly the love your game message will be a key message that these coach developers will be sharing in clubland over the next few months.
So Shane, there's an element today of a call to arms and the value of having the conversation, be it coach to player, be it parent to child.
Absolutely, and we've been using the expression, make a game plan. Use that language of coaches to say, okay, what's my plan to talk to the kids that I'm in charge of as a junior coach, or talk to the young men and women, as was said at the top also. 18 to 24-year-olds make up the largest group of sports bettors in Victoria. We think that's also an audience we should really target and talk to them about the fact that not all gambling is recreational and fun. It can lead to risk and it can lead to harm.
So there's a lot before us. It's great to have you both here. Thanks for inspiring the journey that we're all about to go on. So Shane and Ben, thank you.
Thanks
we will start our work with player development and a couple who have done it at clubs for a long time, from the absolute standard bearer that is Melbourne and a long timer at the Saints. Damien Carroll and Adam Uze next.
The effects of gambling ads on kids is becoming clear.
Young men aged between 18 and 24
now make up a third of all sports bettors in Victoria.
And participation by young women is rising.
They're the first generation to grow up with so many ads.
It's not right that kids think it's normal to bet on sports.
So our clubs all say no to sports betting sponsorship.
We may come from different sporting codes.
All run out as rivals.
But on this, we stand united. We call on you to make a game plan.
Talk to your kids about the risks of sports betting.
Encourage your kids to love the game and not the odds.
Welcome back to our Love the Game forum as we contemplate the question of developing young players. So a man who's doing that in real time at St Kilda, the head of development and learning, is Damien Carroll. Damien, welcome.
Thanks very much.
And he might be the hottest assistant coach on the scene at the moment, Adam Uze from Melbourne. Adam, great to see you.
No worries.
For the coaches who have gathered for this forum, you live this in real time. What's your philosophy around developing your young players at the Saints?
Yeah, I think getting them to use their strengths is really important. So we love seeing them put time into their strengths, and obviously they've all got areas they want to improve and work on as well. But using what's around them, the coaches and other players, just to develop themselves and giving them a chance to sort of drive their own development, I suppose, is important.
Adam, as much as strategy is a big part of footy, how much is this to develop the players on your watch?
Yeah, well, I think it's the key. The fundamentals of the game haven't changed for 100 years. So getting good at what you're good at is what we focus on at our footy club. So helping them, sometimes getting out of their way to obviously develop and get better at their craft. And then obviously once you get an understanding of their role in their craft, just mastering it as well as they can.
So what's your role in that, Adam, if you could share for coaches at all levels?
Yeah, well, I think it changes as you go through, like whether you're a development coach or a line coach. So it depends on what group you're working with. So if you're a line coach, you're working with players that have been in the system a lot longer. So then it's the finer details of their game. So the fundamentals have pretty much been done. Then they're starting to look at system and their own mastery. So, as a development coach, though, like you're looking at, you've got to get your game to a certain level. You want to be elite at this. You want to maintain this, and obviously any RFIs in your game you want to improve in. So, I think it just depends on what role you've got within your footy club. So, obviously, as DC said before, having those coaches and trusting your coaches is a real important role.
The spectrum, I imagine, is fascinating here, Damien. It is for the first-year players who come in and to the veterans who have been in the system for so long.
Yeah, I think Adam touched on a really good point there, that development is for everyone. It doesn't stop at a certain age. It continues to progress, and there's different things you might want to work on and perhaps take ownership as you get older, but development is about developing your whole list, and whether that's in under 12s or whether that's a senior footy club and you're talking to your captain or you're talking to an 18-year-old, I think you have to invest in all of them.
The role of the coach, so not only to instruct but to mentor, how have you seen that grow in your time, Adam?
Yeah, and that's really similar again. Like, you've obviously got the senior coach that oversees everything, so he's mentoring coaches and players. But then the next level of that is your line coach. So you've got your line players that you're really mentoring, and then underneath that you've got a development coach that's looking after the majority of our younger players. So looking after the whole player is something that I think every club is getting better at, and is obviously thinking more of, rather than just being really good at the technical and tactical side of the game, just looking at the personal aspect and even the mental aspect of the game. So I think a lot of clubs are improving in that area, but it's still something I think there's a lot of growth in.
Damien, Dimitri from Yarraville Seddon Eagles has sent through his question. There's a lot of focus on skill development, but far less on team and human development. What are the opportunities to be more of the latter?
Yeah, I've found in my experience, and probably going back a long time now since I coached local footy, but I just think having time to connect with the players is really important. So thinking of some activities outside the tactical and technical, and just allowing 5 or 10 minutes to do a bit of speed dating with each other and ask some questions and find out about information and then share it with the group. So maybe even a little bit of throwing a topic up, thinking about an answer, sharing it with a partner, and then sharing it with a bigger group, and just connecting on a different level, so it's not all about the footy and what's going to happen on the weekend.
So that connection piece has clearly been part of first that Richmond dynasty and now what Melbourne is trying to replicate.
Yeah, it is, and it's something I think as a coach you're really trying to master. So there's one thing obviously teaching and coaching a player about the game, but then what they're feeling. So pre-game, post-game, how they're feeling. So just having that touch point and just being there for them. So part of a review, as an individual review, you'd give all the technical aspects of the game, but understanding how they're feeling in certain parts of the game, understanding how they got themselves out of that. I think part of our role is not only a coach, you're almost a mental coach as well. So I think that's a massive growth area in all clubs.
Dimitri, you've won a Melbourne Football Club money can't buy experience, so you'll see it firsthand. If you were to compare the modern player experience to what you had, and it's not that long ago, how substantially different is it?
Well, in the end, you've just got less people and less support. So, as in we had back then, so we'd have 2 line coaches that were not only your coaches, they were mentors, they were your psych. And we had a senior coach that oversaw all that and tried to handle all those things. So the support network for all players now is obviously next level. So whether it's country footy or local footy, that's the element that those coaches have to absorb. So we're obviously really lucky and fortunate that we've got 10 different coaches, whether it's mind coaches, skill coaches, fitness coaches. The hardest thing as a local coach is you're trying to manage all of those things together. So we're fortunate that we've got a support network in all those areas for our players.
It's great of you to share your expertise and your insights. Thank you to you both, Damien, Adam. Thanks. Good stuff. So the best of the era right now is Melbourne. The best of what has been is Richmond, and Emma Murray has been such a big part of that. She'll be with Abby Holmes next.
Remember when sport was just sport? When you could listen to epic wins, watch the legends, or just have a kick without getting sold sports gambling? I don't. It's been bonus bets, odds, and early payouts for as long as I can remember. But it shouldn't be. I should be able to love sport for what it is, not for the first goal kicker multis, whatever they are. And if you think so too, then it's time to join the club. Join more than 400 clubs across Victoria who have said no to sports gambling sponsorship. And together we can make sure the kids like me get to love the game, not the odds.
Welcome to the comfort of the lounge, where I am joined by renowned mindfulness coach Emma Murray. Em, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, you operate in the high performance mindfulness space, so can you just give us a bit of a rundown as to what's involved there?
Yeah, so I work with elite athletes and coaches and teams to help them with their mindset so that they can get their attention into the moment and best deliver in that moment. You know, I think we hear that word mindfulness and we've heard it a lot, but we're not exactly sure what it means. And effectively, it's just helping your players, or, you know, enabling an athlete to actually have his attention on what he needs to do to best execute that moment.
Well, I guess today with the Love the Game Coaches Forum, we're having a look at some of the negative impacts that sports betting is having on the sporting landscape. How do you see that from your position?
Yeah, I actually did a podcast on this topic on the long haul, and so it was eye-opening to me. Like, it really shocked me about the amount of sports betting advertising was the first thing that really grabbed me. I'm a mum as well as working in this space, and you know, it was 374 ads a day. Our youngsters and teenagers and young adults are exposed to, and that is free to air only.
Yeah, and I'm just going to elaborate on this because I've got some of those stats in front of me too. So, as you said, 345,900 broadcast in Victoria alone last year, an average of 948 per day, an increase of 250% since 2016, and an average of 148 of those ads were broadcast during, the 6 to 8:30 time slot. So that's really alarming, isn't it?
It is incredibly alarming, and I think we hear those stats, and if you're someone coaching young people and you're a parent, it can be really alarming. But I think for me, as part of that podcast, I actually spoke to some people who were gambling, and yes, stats are alarming, but when you actually sit, Josh Bruce from the Western Bulldogs was really open about the experience of gambling and the feelings of gambling, and that's when it became really real about how it can trap you and how it can start to ruin your life, and what that can feel like. And I think we have to really remember that. And what I had to catch myself was that I know that pokies are dirty and bad, and they're not great. But sports betting seems fun, and it feels like it's part of the game. But it's really calling out that that's not the case any longer, and we need to be on this, and we need to help our young people because they can't escape what they're seeing and hearing about it.
And just on this, you've done a lot of work with Richmond Footy Club. There's players that are on the other side of that as well. Dylan Grimes jumps to mind. He was one that came out, whether it was last year or the year before, and said, this is not okay. I'm literally receiving death threats because somebody's put a bet on and it hasn't come off, or whatever it might be. But then these incredible athletes and people, first and foremost, are copying the grunt of that.
Yeah, and that's horrific that someone's out there trying to do their job and trying to perform to the best of their ability, and then they're getting blamed for someone losing a multi. That is horrific, but to me that really just shows us what level of state of fear that the person who is gambling is in, that they're so desperate that they actually see it as a personal attack if the player does not do what they need them to do. So I think for us, we need to take that as a warning and say, okay, this is getting out of control and we need to do something to fix this. And we cannot just think it's not happening. My kids are fine, and they're only placing the odd bet, and it's not much money, and we have to really stop it in its tracks.
Yeah, we have to call it out, don't we? I've got a competition question here for you from Nicholas from the Banyule Junior Football Club. He asked, sporting clubs are often an outlet and sanctuary for kids facing challenges such as learning difficulties and complex or strong emotions. What role and opportunity do we as the sporting club have empower in kids in life outside of the club as well?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. And, it doesn't matter if it's at a local club or an AFL club, when we go to play our sport, it's a sanctuary, and it is supposed to be a space where we can feel good about ourselves. And I think it's really important that as coaches and sporting administrators, we realise the opportunity that we have to actually say to a kid, you can do something well, you are safe, you know, you are worthy, you are enough. And, you know, we sometimes get trapped as coaches into thinking that I have to get these good results, and it's the results that I get that will make the kid feel like they love footy and love being here. And we have to actually stop and go, no, our job as a coach is to actually reinforce to these young people what they can do, what they are good enough. And if that doesn't win us the game, that's okay.
Yeah.
We've got a bigger purpose than that.
Yeah.
And it should be a space that I feel safe, not a space where I feel the expectation of the coach's desire to win or my parents' desire to win, that I can just be safe to play football, play something I love.
Em, thank you. I feel like I could sit here and talk to you all day, but yeah, we really appreciate your insights here today.
Thank you.
Jared will be back in studio next. Stay with us.
It's time to make a game plan. I'm concerned that almost a third of people in Victoria who bet on sports are aged 18 to 24. Many of our players are within that bracket. It's not surprising that this group is also the first generation to have grown up with sports betting ads. The ads train kids to think that betting is the same as winning, but that's just not true. We need to coach our kids, talk to them about the risks of sports betting, encourage them to love the game, not the odds.
A coach is always learning. So what are the opportunities for community coaches? What are the resources available to you? Let's broaden our conversation. Rick Coburn is the AFL State Coaching Manager at AFL Victoria. Rick, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
He's a Hall of Famer in his own right. He's the Western Bulldogs AFLW coach, Nathan Burke. Nathan, welcome.
Thanks, Jared.
It's been such an interrupted period, Rick, for footy over a couple of years. What are the coaching numbers like this season?
Well, there's certainly in 2021, they managed to come back probably about 500 down on where we were at in 2019. And we're at the same figure this time right now in 2022. So we're hoping that we can get close to where we were back in 19.
So we need to stimulate, we need to provide a path. How do you support such a significant group?
Well, after COVID, it's really important that football's a community game. So we get back into the community. Our coaches need support. So we need our coaches to recruit as well. Don't try to do it by yourself. Try to get parents out of the car if you're coaching junior footy. Use your community, use the resources locally. And from a national point of view and a state point of view at AFL Vic, we've got resources to support as well.
Berkey, no matter what the level, is a coach always learning?
Absolutely, Jared. I'm learning all the time, and I owe it to my players to keep learning and to keep giving them new ideas and new concepts. So, yeah, I think once you think you've stopped learning and you've learned it all, well, then you should get out of the game.
So you've been the kid, you've been the champion player, and now you're the coach. What's your perception around the role and just how vital it is with a group of boys or girls as you've experienced it?
Yeah, I'll probably cliche here, throw you a couple of quotes. One, people ask me, why do I coach? And basically it's, if you're not making somebody else's life better, well then you're wasting your own. And coaching is a great vehicle to live out that quote. You get a whole bunch of people there that you can make a difference in their lives. Not just teach them how to play sport, but all the other life skills that come along with sport, with winning and losing, success, failure, getting in the team, not being in the team, injuries, overcoming those. They're all life skills that translate to things outside sport. So you get the opportunity to upskill people in those areas, and that's a privilege.
In the microcosm of a footy club, so you've been the player looking up to the coach, now you've got a group looking to you, and this is why the coach is the centrepiece of the Love the Game round. How cognisant are you that we are looking to you for guidance in our small group?
Yeah, you have to be. And if you're not willing to be that person, well then go and see Rick, get upskilled to be that person, because I can guarantee you that the self-satisfaction you get from that side of coaching, as just as much as winning and losing, it's more rewarding than winning and losing. So that's where the courses and upskilling yourself as a coach, there's no end to it, and it's such a vital part of the job.
Just give us a picture of that, Rick. What are the resources that are available, the courses, the pathway to better yourself each year as a coach?
A real blended approach these days. You can do a range of things online. A range of courses can be done through the Coach AFL portal and homepage, but there's still the face-to-face courses like there has always been. There's still the workshops happening all over Victoria. At the moment, we're over 50 for the year so far, face-to-face options. There's still level 2 and level 3 courses in the community for those coaches that have been around for 2 or 3 years and are really wanting to get serious about it. And as Nathan said so well, we're all development coaches. The best way to help as a coach, all coaches want to do a good job, the best way to do that is develop yourself.
So Berkey, and the junior coaches who are with us at the moment, Shane's with the McLeod Junior Football Club. He wants to ask you, what in your opinion should be the most important goal for a junior coach?
Yep. How I assess junior coaches, how many kids come back and play next year. That to me should be your number one goal, getting the kids to play year after year after year. Underneath that, I would teach them about the qualities of teamwork, being a good team person, being a coachable person, and then third from that, teach them the skills. And underlining that whole thing is fun. If they're having fun, they're more likely to come back. But as a coach, if you can turn around to me and say, hey, every single one of my 25 that I had last year have fronted up this year, whether you've come last or first, I'd say fantastic job.
Yeah, that's a beautiful picture of the layers of it. So Shane, you'll receive a high-performance mindfulness sports course. Emma Murray's such a central figure in this, as will Nicholas from Banyule Junior Football Club, whose question was read to Emma a little bit earlier on. Rick, Nathan, it's great to have you as part of our forum.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks.
Coming up next, Premiership coach Chris Scott will join us, maintaining the rage, being successful season on season on season.
Young people think gambling on sport is normal. Almost a third of Victorians who bet on sport are young blokes, 18 to 24 years of age. They're also the first generation to have grown up with so many gambling ads. Parents, let's make a game plan. Let's coach our kids to love the game, not the odds. Talk to them about the risk while they're young. You can be the coach. Encourage your kids to love the game and not the odds. For tips, go to lovethegame.vic.gov.au.
Welcome back to the Love the Game Forum. It's said that repeat success is the hardest thing to do in sport, but across an era at Geelong, they have normalised success and stayed in contention, defying the gravity of the AFL system. These are the Chris Scott eras. It is the defining achievement of this time. So when the topic is consistency and maintaining success, we couldn't be in better hands. Chris Scott, welcome.
Thanks, Jared. Good to be with you.
What are the tangibles that you could share around that notion of maintaining success?
Well, I think there are the obvious things, Jared, around planning, preparation, the build of your list, staying up with the game, making sure that you're not only playing a sustainable game, but also coaching it and educating it as well. I think they are obvious to most people, and while I say they're obvious, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're easy. But I think the thing that I would focus on the most, that may be a little less obvious, is just the notion of creating a really positive environment for everyone. We fundamentally believe at the Cats, and I suspect this goes for most sporting environments, if not business environments as well, that if your people are happy and engaged in the rest of their lives, and they bounce into work looking forward to each day, that correlates with performance. It doesn't guarantee it necessarily. And there's always a natural tension there between high performance and pushing standards and pushing people to be better tomorrow than they are today. But we just believe that if underpinning all of that people are happy, it will contribute to that success. So again, that sounds a little bit easier to say than it is to do. But I think that's the key in consistency. The thing, you can certainly get short-term gains by pushing people really hard. Another example might be if you want complete compliance in a certain area. For example, you want to make sure that all your players are absolutely on time for a meeting, you can threaten to fine them, and they'll almost certainly be on time to avoid that fine. But over time, does that lead to a positive, engaged, happy environment, or does it lead to an environment that's compliant, but mainly based on fear rather than an inherent desire to improve the place?
So the AFL's a serious business, but there is a correlation. Should winning be fun?
Well, I think it should. I mean, we consistently engage our not only our players but our staff as well. To try to make an assessment on, how they're feeling about things. So the scoreboard's really obvious with us. We have a win-loss that's really easy for everyone to see. A scoreboard within games. So the on-field part's really easy to measure. And typically, if you are winning, then people are enjoying things a lot more. So even when you broaden that conversation to culture, and I'm yet to see a team that consistently finishes in the bottom four but rates top four in terms of culture and player engagement. So the two things are obviously linked, but one of the things, at least that I try to model as the leader, is trying to sort of remove myself from this notion that winning is a relief and losing is a disaster. You've got to try to find the joy in winning. You don't want it to last too long because it can bleed into, the following week and lead to complacency. But over the course of, I think, a career, if you looked at the majority of times, you'd say, look, they're hard, and but the real highs, the top of the roller coaster, more than make up for the lows. So if you don't enjoy it, I think you are doing yourself a disservice.
Then there's the question of mindset. So I don't use the phrase defying gravity lightly. There's almost, it's almost an imperative, a truth that you can only compete for so long in a communist system. You have defied that. How important is it not to give in to the idea your time competing is finished, it's time to fall?
Well, I think it's a really important message for the players in particular. And we've said it publicly a few times, and we certainly say it internally. At the start of every season, we look our players in the eye and say, we're going to give you every chance to compete at the pointy end of the season. It doesn't guarantee anything necessarily. And it sounds obvious, again, to say we're going to do everything we can in this moment. But as you say, in a communist environment, that it is very much a handicap, not only over the course of seasons, but every season the draw, for example, is a handicap. You get a better draw if you finish down the bottom of the ladder, a harder draw if you finish up towards the top. So we don't want it to become a weight around the neck of our players that, look, we might be, the longer we stay up there, the harder it's going to get for us. But we do want to approach it as a challenge and say to them, we're having a crack. But the other thing that is really important to us is that we're honest. There's no point saying those things if your actions don't back it up. And we completely understand that there'll come a point in time where we might not be able to say that to our players. We might have to say, okay, we're in a phase now where this is going to be a couple of years where we need to build, and the ultimate success this year may not be our main priority. I'm not looking forward to those times as much.
Underpinning this today, Chris said the theme is love the game, not the odds. So with a focus towards the harm that gambling can do, is that actually an active conversation in your environment with the large group of young men that you lead?
It is. And it's really important to not only me as the coach, but our whole club. We understand the obligations that we have to try to develop good players, but just as importantly, good young men. And there are some real challenges for young people in general. But I think those challenges, particularly as they relate to young men who, in a lot of cases, are making the majority of their lifetime salary in the early part of their career. So, there are some temptations there that can be difficult for young men without much life experience to get their head around. And then that's where our obligation comes in. So fundamental to our philosophy within our program is that, we're not trying to run a really sterile environment where we lecture to the players. We see our role as kind of one of facilitation. We very much feel like the leaders of our organisation work for the players. It's not the other way around, but incumbent on us in our responsibilities to work for them. We're asking them to just think a little bit more about the decisions that they make early. And I think particularly when it comes to gambling, our job is not to say you shouldn't do it, but our job is to make sure they understand how the system works. And in a lot of cases when the system is very much rigged against you, I think that helps the decision making a bit. So we certainly say don't gamble, but know what you're getting yourself into.
Chris, it's great to get your insights. Thanks for sharing them with us.
Thanks, Jared.
Chris Scott, part of our Love the Game forum. We'll have more next.
Kids are growing up thinking gambling on sport is normal. Have a conversation with your kids about the risks associated with sports betting.
You can help them love the game, not the odds.
Visit lovethegame.vic.gov.au.
On our Love the Game forum, I'm now joined by pioneer, glass ceiling breaker of critical influence in football circles in, well, over many a decade now, I reckon. Peter Searle, among many other things right now, is an ambassador for the SMJFL. Peter, great to have you on the forum.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Big question. So, courageous leadership and influencing change. If we were to pick two themes for the advancement of female football, we might choose those two. Give us a little snapshot of your experiences under those headings for as long as you like, maybe the past decade.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey being at the forefront and being involved, but then also standing back and watching it happen at community level as well. And definitely the changes is, as we all know, is the numbers, the participation, the want, the desire to have a women's team and to support the women's team as best that they can do. If I reflect back on it, I think that, structurally we're starting to get things right. You're getting a lot of support financially through governments to get, change rooms and those things right in terms of creating a sense of connectedness and belongingness. And it's, even to the point where clubs are hiring specialists, skills coaches, or, wanting to develop a separate curriculum for female football. So, they're really desire to improve the skill and I guess, as I said, it's almost laying the foundations is there. But if I probably really, truly, honestly reflect on how we're going with the cultural aspect, I think there's certainly room to grow in that area. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, I'm saying it in a way that people want to, and they want to say, yeah, we've got a great culture and our clubs, we do integration really well, but do they actually really understand what it's like, what it takes to actually change and shift culture to enable women to thrive into a club?
The AFLW is a very public shop front. This is a grassroots movement. Do you in fact think that community clubs have been superior or better equipped to tackle this change than AFLW clubs?
I think community clubs have a better platform to get it right. And what I mean by that is, they generally are doing it for all the right reasons, and that's because, their daughters are there, or it could be the VAFA, their mothers are there, or their sisters, or so forth. So, the intent right from the start to why they're having a women's program in the club is really honest and genuine. It's not about, what sponsors we can get in or how we can grow the financial capability or the look of our game. It's really there for the members. So I absolutely think they've got that opportunity, and they're also not limited by the 150 year of a historical organisation.
Yep.
That they don't have to break down those, I guess, barriers that have prevented women to be able to be in those spaces. So, I think they're genuine, they're not limited by the history, and also, not limited by results, competitiveness, ego, even within your own club. It's not like the men's team's going to miss something out if the women's team are coming in. There's no men or women's team. I think they can generally say, holistically, what does this look like for a club?
There's a big question here. It feels like the theme for a thesis. It's come from a football and netball club in Gippsland. In order to create an environment for women and girls in AFL of positive change at both the local league and community club level, how do we encourage genuine collaboration in order to influence those who often hold considerable power and little desire to change?
Yeah, it is a hard-hitting question, that one, isn't it? And it's not just a question for football clubs, it's a question for society, really. And when I say it's a question for society, it's because, you know, we're born into this world of authority, you know, and that happens straight from, you know, direction, protection, order as a kid, you know, as a parent. And it's again, coming from the right reasons, but I'm going to direct you, I'm going to, you know, provide you guidance, I'm going to give you the answers, I'm going to, you know, maintain order, no disrupting, you know, you've got to maintain the order, and I'm going to protect you. And that's what we've experienced for 30 and 40 years. So that's what we look up to, that's what we respond to. But that's also the bit that needs changing, because if I tell you, you know, I want you to change your beliefs, I can't get you to change your beliefs.
Yep.
The only person who can change your beliefs is you. So, you know, this whole thing of telling is not going to work. So I've got to find a way, and the key word there is to influence. And it's not just influence you, it's how do you have those influential conversations amongst all the different layers within your club? Because there's no use a board saying, we're going to get a women's team on board and just telling everyone else, this is what we're going to do and we're going to support it. And the under-14 women's coach and the under-14s men's coach and the under-14s men coaches doesn't really value it, it's not going to work. So we've got to be able to have those conversations with that under-14 men's coach of, you know, what does that look like? How do I hook you? How do I maintain a conversation where I start to then shift and probably challenge your unhelpful beliefs? Yep. So that, you know, you start to move towards, you know, the better and more helpful outcomes. And I think when you've got strong leadership that is able to have those conversations with all the stakeholders within the club at different levels, that you'll get genuine buy-in, and you'll get an opportunity then to actually create the space for women to be able to, for the women, or, you know, it's for the people living it. The lived experiences have to be having the voice to be saying what they need, rather than it coming from the top saying, oh yeah, no, I've got the answer to that, I'm going to give you that. Yep. You know, so they need the space. And I guess the last thing for me would be, you know, what does respectful behaviours look like? You know, we don't want the whole, you know, oh, it's just boys being boys. Like, as society, we've moved past that. Yep. You know, if I want my child to go to a club, if I want my daughter to go to a club, I don't want her to tolerate a comment. Like, why is the word tolerate even in there? Yep. You know, because that's actually not being curious, that's not showing understanding. So, you know, I think there's a real big education piece around what is appropriate conversations, behaviours, and the impact on that, on everybody within the club.
That is the ultimate conversation starter, Peter. Thank you for your insights on that front. We're going to stay with our AFLW theme as we head into the lounge next with Abby.
Kids see gambling ads everywhere. Join the club and talk to the young people in your life about the risks associated with sports betting. You can help them love the game, not the odds. Visit lovethegame.vic.gov.au.
Welcome back to the lounge and the Love the Game at Coaches Forum, and I'm now joined by three AFLW head coaches. We've got Steve Simons, Natalie Wood and Beck Goddard. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Ab.
Now, this is an excellent group to have a bit of a discussion around creating and building culture. I look at Beck and Nat in particular. You're currently in the depths of the list build at your respective clubs with expansion coming in, but Beck, when you're looking at, you know, your list build this year, what's important to you when you're trying to, I guess, juggle the balance between, you know, young, exciting youth, but also experience and leadership and culture?
Yeah, well, I think culture's an interesting word, because everywhere you go, it doesn't matter if it's the first time you're at a place or, you know, the last time you're at somewhere, there's always a culture, and it's what does that look like. And when I think about culture, I think about a really big fluffy pillow, and if we opened it up out the front of a house, like ripped that pillow open and the feathers flew into the air, and then we tried to go back and pick up those feathers the next day, how many would you get back?
Yeah.
And so it's about the quality of the feathers in the pillow, and making sure that you start the next day by the way you finish the last, and having a diverse group of people, like you've just said, different age, different diversity, different experiences in life to create that winning environment.
Well, you were obviously a part of it in year one with a list build with Adelaide. You went on to win the premiership. So with your mind...
So did you.
Yeah, I did.
You were there.
I did.
You were there.
But from that experience, are you using that same mindset in this list build, or are you looking at all of the learnings from those years in particular in the way that you go about it?
We love the word learnings
We
in
do.
footy. Yeah, there's a lot that I've learnt professionally and how to work in football that I've certainly taken with me, and I'm also, being at Hawthorn now and being part of Sam Mitchell's football program has really helped me on that football journey. But I think it always comes back to being a good person and loving football and having kindness to everyone that you're around, and that you're there for a common journey, and those things never change in football, that love and the standards and the effort that you want to bring each week.
And Steve, from your perspective, I guess what influences have you seen throughout your career so far that have, played a big part in the culture that you've built today at Collingwood?
Yeah, I think it's a wide range of different things that you get exposed to. I guess I've been fortunate enough to be involved in a number of clubs over my journey, and all at different levels as well. So you grab a little bit from each environment that you're in, and obviously through your work, places that you work within and the people you work within, you're also always analysing, observing, grabbing little bits. But also, I've got a young family as well, and growing up with family and being a father, so you grab characteristics of being a father as well as you go along the journey, and sort of all those experiences you combine into one and grab the bits out that you think are really strong and set your principles around them, and then from there you're shaping your principles amongst your playing group and really creating the environment for them to work in. Culturally, the environment is the big thing that I really work on, trying to shape that right environment for every single member, whether it's a staff member or an athlete, to work in and to grow in and be themselves in is really important as well. So.
And Nat, what about from your perspective in the side that you're going to put together? I think we speak so often about standards and really driving them within a playing group and a football club. But standards, it's not necessarily what people do on the field, but it's more importantly what everybody does off the field, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's easy to say take the wins and losses away, but I think it's so important to have things that internally you're measuring your success to, and that's got to be based off behaviours. Steve and Beck just both said that, it's really important to have common goals, and I think, the more clarity that the whole organisation has, from your staff to your coaches to your players, if you have a clarity around that common goal and you all understand your actions and behaviours within that, and then can set little milestones and achievement standards that then will allow you to have success on the field. But being able to internally recognise what those standards and achievements are, I think is really important as well, because it allows you to celebrate some really positive cultural steps forward, even though you might not be winning yet at the time. It allows you to really internalise and celebrate that.
Well, you've coached for a long time, but, first year at Essendon Football Club, with the women's program coming in, have you sat back and looked on to Ben Rutten and what he's doing with the men's program over the last month or so since you've been announced? I know Beck's, working full-time in the men's program as well. So what have you really picked up on, as you said, a side that necessarily hasn't had the start to the season that they would have hoped for?
Yeah, exactly like Beck, I've been involved in the men's program for the last couple of months and been able to immerse myself in their philosophy and how they educate their players, and also how they operate as an organisation. And as you said, like, the wins aren't coming for the boys at the moment, and I'm seeing firsthand, internally, the a real considered, real measured approach, and real focus on the controllables. Obviously, there's a lot of noise that happens on the outside, but it's terrific to see Essendon's a large organisation. It's terrific to see them really sticking to what they have as their their milestones and their goals, but also being prepared to sit back and reflect and tweak some things along the way, but still staying to the vision that they've got. And it's been really impressive to see, the difference between the external noise to the control, the consideration and the deep thought and almost calmness that's within the four walls.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a competition question as well that I'm going to throw out to each of you now, and it's from Cameron at Ocean Grove Football Netball Club. He's asked, the balance at local level of building a culture based on community, mateship and respect is what we are building on, but without being as successful on field, how do we keep these players believing in this philosophy? So Nat, you've probably just touched on that a little bit.
I just did a little bit, so I might pass over to these two.
Steve?
I think, as Nat just spoke about making sure you've got a clear vision about what you want to be and where you want to go. I think once you've got the end goal and the vision of what it looks like, then everything else falls in underneath. And I think it's about making sure that everyone understands the little steps that need to be towards that vision.
Yep.
And then as you go along each step and start succeeding and ticking off each step, being rewarded and getting that sense of purpose from reaching each milestone as you go along, and acknowledging the persons who've gone above and beyond to reach that milestone is really important as well, so that everyone gets the reassurance that everyone's heading in the right direction, but also getting the reassurance and the acknowledgement of their work as they go along. So I think that's the key.
Awesome. Well, that was a good answer from you. And Beck, did you have a quick comment on that one?
Oh, Cameron, was it?
Yes, Cameron.
I've been there, Cameron. I know your pain. It reminds me of my local club, the Gungahlin Jets, when I first started coaching, and we used to lose for 2 seasons straight. It was about 180 points every game, and I couldn't work out for the life of me why the players were still coming back to training every week after getting absolutely smacked. But it was because they were having a good time with their friends. And they got to do things socially and stuck together. And it took about 7 years, but they finally got a premiership. So just stick with it. Like Steve said, the little wins I think are really important, and you celebrate those little moments, whether that's something within a game, something outside of the game, but celebrate those little wins and it'll take you to the next big one.
Awesome insight from you three. I've loved having a chat with you here today, but thank you for joining us and best of luck with season 7 in the AFLW. Stick with us. Jared goes one-on-one with Premiership coach Paul Roos next.
Hi Goody, thanks for joining me, mate. I'd like to get a bit of an idea from you about how you came to love the game in the first place.
Initially it started with the small things of just being around sporting environments, dreaming about running through the banner.
How do you try to bring that to your players?
We try and make sure the environment's a place that's full of care. We want to have our environment where people can grow, they can be themselves, because I think that brings out the best in people.
You know, you're dealing with a group of guys that are in a particular age bracket. Does that come with certain challenges?
I say quite often that I feel like I've got 45 extra children. My responsibility as a coach is to build relationships with people, have genuine conversations, and know that people aren't perfect and they will make mistakes, and it's how people learn through those mistakes, how they grow, and how we can steer them away from those things and live fulfilling lives.
If you're building an environment where everyone feels comfortable being themselves, you've almost done your job, because we're having those conversations ourselves.
Welcome back to Love the Game. When it comes to the idea of culture at a footy club, we are in the best imaginable hands. He built the Bloods at the Sydney Swans, and the genesis of what Melbourne has developed happened on his watch. He's mastered it. Paul Roos from the States. Paul, welcome to the forum.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, mate. Good to see you.
If I asked you just the broad question, define culture and how to build it as a footy club, what have you learnt?
Look, the main things is, first I want to say, every club business has a culture. Every footy club's going to have a culture, and it's driven by the centres of influence, all right? Who are your centres of influence? And typically, it's your senior players, it's your coach. Okay, what is culture then? It's the actions of those people, all right? So I want to be really clear. Your centres of influence, who are they? What are their actions and what are their behaviours? All right, because what will happen, everyone wants to act their way in. The new players coming in will look at the senior players, will look at the centres of influence, and they'll determine what they're doing. If they're going to the pub on the Friday night, guess where they're going to turn up? The pub on a Friday night.
Yep.
Okay, if they're going home and watching a movie on a Friday night, spending time with their wife, their girlfriend, whatever it is, guess where the young players are going to be going? They're going home. They're going to maybe get some takeaway. Thursday night at training. If the senior players, the first thing that they see, crack open a can of beer, we've just had selection, read out match committee, blah, 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 blah. What do you think the young players are going to do? They're going to look around, they're going to look at each other, and they're going to go, the centre of influence, and even the coach does this. This is what we are going to do. All right, so I want to be really clear on that. Who are the centres of influence, and what are their actions, and what are their behaviours? And that will clearly define your culture.
How powerful is it, Paul, when you identify it, move it, and then get it notionally right?
Oh, it's unbelievable. It really is. I mean, it's so strong. If you look at the Sydney Swans as an example, you know, the team that's been able to sustain that under John Longmire. But it gets back to, again, who are the people that are driving it? And it's the learned skill. So if you get it right, as I said before, the young people will come in and do the right thing. So then when they become the leaders, it's self-fulfilling. It fuels itself. Then those young players come in under the leaders that learnt from the good behaviour, and it just keeps on going, all right? But it can turn really quickly either way. I want to make that clear as well. If you get a few ratbags in that have got, you know, a big personality and can drive it, they can erode your culture really quickly. If you get a couple of really good senior players that come into your organisation, to your footy club, they can change it really quickly, all right? So identify your centres of influence, make sure they're really, really good people. But again, don't be surprised if you've got a poor culture, if you've got some ratbags that are the senior players at your footy club. It's going to happen. It's just, that's the way it is.
Paul, a pertinent question from Gary from the Beau Morris Football Club. And Gary wins a Geelong Football Club Money Can't Buy experience with this question. How do you reconcile the quest for immediate success with the patience required for strong and long-term cultural development?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I'm going to start with the fact, I'll answer a little bit differently. Because if you've got good people, then you'll have both. You'll have a really good culture and you'll have long-term success. So I'm going to take the question is, we've got a couple of ratbags at the footy club. We can win a premiership next year, but what does that mean long-term? I think we've seen examples of that in the AFL system, all right? I'm not going to go into it, but you know the answer to that question, right? The question is, yes, we might get a year or 2 years of good, but the club itself will erode and explode, and we've seen it, all right? So you're better to take the longer term, get rid of those people, or be aware, or say, look, we are going to sacrifice our culture, be aware of what you're creating, because we all probably know the answer to the question, all right? So you're going to make a decision as a footy club. Are we going to tolerate the ratbags to win a premiership? If we are, we're going to suffer in the long term. But okay, we're making that decision to suffer in the long term for short-term success. You know it. I prefer to take the other way, all right? Let's get rid of the ratbags. Let's sacrifice a little bit of short-term success. Let's get some really good, high-quality people in where there's enough of them around. Let's get them into the system. We'll drop down a little bit next year, but I guarantee what will happen over the course of time, we'll win more than we lose.
Roosy, it's great to tap your knowledge. Thanks for being involved today.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
So, Paul Roos, the two ideas, culture and developing young players. Now, at the intersection of that is Guy McKenna, who was the inaugural coach of the Gold Coast Suns. Bluey, welcome.
Hi, Jared.
So, from scratch, you get the youngest batch of players ever gathered together in the AFL system, and you have to build a culture. When you think back on those two realities, what do you lean on? What did you learn? What did you do well?
Yeah, well, I have a simple saying around culture and building that is thoughts become words, words become actions, and we just heard Roosy talk about that, and good actions, of course. Actions become habits, and habits become culture. And that's what you're trying to do. So obviously instilling the good ones, not so much the bad ones. So with a young group, you've got to be very clear. And again, I can have my thoughts, but it's the thoughts of everyone. How do we want to go about this? How do we want to look? How do we want to look on the field? How do we want to look off the field? How do we want to look at training? So all those sorts of things. So certainly at Gold Coast with only 8 senior players, I sort of had to pull from Gary Ablett, who had the experience of premierships at Geelong, Nathan Bock at Adelaide, Michael Riscatelli, who just won a best and fairest at Gold Coast, at Brisbane, I should say. So, yeah, pull on all that information. I had some, obviously, success as a player at West Coast. I just left Collingwood, who were on a preliminary final, so all those bits and pieces, and sort of bring all that together, talk about it all, and say, and I would say in our journey of my 4 years at Gold Coast, I reckon we got through the thought part. We started to do the doing part,
yep.
and then the actions were coming. We clearly, and I think Paul would say this, culture takes time to develop. I mean, easily it can be eroded, but it takes time. And as I said, I think we had the actions going. We just hadn't got to the culture side of things as yet.
Did you feel that, or you got to 10 and 12 and the Suns haven't been able to get to that moment? Did you feel the impatience creep in? So there's the idea of starting from scratch and building, but at some point there's we want results now.
Yeah. Oh, no question. And look, the 4 years, 3 wins, 8 wins, and then 10, and obviously Gary and 6 others went down in that back half of the season. And the graph was heading north. We were going well. And I think we were certainly developing on the field, and good actions on the field and good actions off the field. But ultimately, the impatience for that success. And I think I always look back at, and you'd know this being a Geelong man, Tom Hawkins. 5 years, he breaks out in the grand final and belts Ben Reid and pulls him apart like a hot chook. And that was 5 years in a system where he was training with multiple premiership players. In his first season, he sat behind Podsiadly and Mooney. He then, after 20, 30 games, Mooney retires. Now it's Podsiadly. He moves into the second position, a second fiddle as a forward. And then after 80 to 100 games, Podsiadly retires, and now he's the main forward. And you look in one of the best nurseries going around to develop young kids. There's Tom Hawkins after 5 years. And I think, like culture and developing players, it takes time. But unfortunately, boards and senior coaches, as I found out, they get a bit impatient at times and they'll move you before, I think, time. And I think with Stuart Dew right now, hopefully, I think he's into his 4th year, maybe his 5th. Hopefully they can just stick with him another 12 months. And I reckon those kids that not only have they played 80 games themselves or to 100 games, they've actually spent some time together to develop that great culture on the field and off.
You've got such a wealth of experience. As a player, you're a Hall of Famer, the elite coaching, grassroots footy and the cricket experience. When you come across young coaches and they ask you for a pearl of wisdom, what do you like to share with them?
I'd just like to ask the kid before you start venting, because you've seen something. So coaches just naturally want to intervene because they got this great IP, which is fantastic. But I say, just shut your eyes. So you're talking to a 10-year-old or you're talking to a 12-year-old. You remember how many books or life experiences you've had? You've had about that much. Me as a 53-year-old, Jared, I've had a few more. So don't expect a 12 or a 14-year-old boy or girl to know what you know, because you've had so much more life experience. So ask them a question. So what are you working on? So what are you trying to do? Have you tried this? Oh, no, I haven't. So help them almost find the answers themselves. Too many young coaches, I think, just want to tell rather than teach.
Yep.
And I think that's the simplicity of coaching, is teaching the players to improve themselves as people and improve themselves as sports people.
It's great of you to share your experiences. Thanks for being involved.
Pleasure.
More on the Love the Game Forum coming up next.
Young men aged between 18 to 24 make up almost a third of sports bettors in Victoria, and participation by young women is rising. This group is the first generation to have grown up with sports betting ads. Almost 9 in 10 Victorian sports fans are concerned that young people are overexposed to sports betting ads. To protect them, Victorian sporting clubs are coming together to say no to sports betting sponsorships. Sign up to Love the Game and receive free resources, a gambling policy template, and exclusive offers and benefits for your club. Take a stand against sports betting ads. Love the game, not the odds.
So we bring our Love of the Game Forum to a close, and Abby, I'm not sure we could have asked for a better array of insights and experience.
Exactly right. We were very spoilt, weren't we? And so many key takeaways from this one for me, but mainly it's that coaches are key influencers of our young players. Coaches have a vital role to play in any club. They are effective communicators and teachers, as well as great listeners as well. And they lead by example, they're hardworking and have character building traits. So many key takeaways, but that was it for me.
There's a call to arms here, isn't there? We call on all coaches to make a game plan to talk to your team about the risks of sports betting. You don't need to be an expert on gambling to start a conversation. Talk to your team this weekend. To find out more on the issue, visit lovethegame.vic.gov.au and make sure your club is a part of the Love the Game program. To all of our guests, thank you for being part of it. To all you community coaches, I hope there was something there for you. Enjoy your season.